Hello, Geneva, and welcome to Officially Speaking. I'm your host, Kevin Starr. Did you know that we have a sister city right outside Paris, France? Here today to talk to us is International Cultural Exchange Committee Chairman Cynthia Albright. Cynthia, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you today.
Why don't you start off by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself?
My husband and I lived in Geneva for 40 years. At that time, I was still teaching science in Lisle at the junior high. I've really always had an interest in international travel and international culture, having had my first trip to Europe just after college. And it was during our many sabbatical stays abroad. We've lived in Geneva, Switzerland, by chance, France, Germany as well, that I really got involved with understanding about how important culture is and learning about people through their art, music, and just their daily lives. So I love Geneva, and when the opportunity came to work with this group, I thought it was really an ideal situation.
Great. For those viewers that may not be familiar with the committee, why don't you tell us about what role they play in the community?
Well, ICEC, as we are known, stands for International Cultural Exchange Committee. And what we attempt to do through our to follow our mission statement, is to foster an understanding between cities, countries, educate people more about international cultures, and in so doing, have contact with receptive cities in other countries.
When was the ICEC formed, and how did you get involved with this group? About
8 years ago, a woman who had grown up here in Geneva was traveling in France and happened to visit Croissy-sur-Seine. This is the name of our cultural partner. And she was staying with the woman who was the president of their cultural exchange organization, Corinne DeMarco. The lady from Geneva quickly noted the similarities between the towns. The demographics are very similar. The distance from a principal city, we're 40 miles from Chicago, they're about 20 miles outside of Paris, the location on a river, and just the general ambiance and charm of the towns. So she remarked about this, and as serendipity would have it, they, the Croations, as they're called, were actually looking for a cultural partner in the U.S., preferably a town that would be near a city with a collection of impressionist paintings. And as the French would say, et voilà, because Geneva is near Chicago, which has the Art Institute, which has a huge collection of impressionist paintings. So Alderman Brown was contacted, and it just sort of rolled on from there. And how did I get involved? Almost from the start. My neighbor handed me an article one day and said, look at this. People in Geneva are starting up a liaison with a French sister city. You've lived in France, near France, etc. So wouldn't this be something you'd like to do? Soon after that, I met Chuck Brown at a party, and he said, aren't you interested in doing this? And I said, okay, so I am. And he introduced me to Ernie Mahaffey, who was then the chairman of the ICEC, and the rest is history. So it's been kind of an 8-year relationship with this.
Cynthia, tell us about our cultural partner, and I'll definitely let you take a stab at pronouncing its proper name.
Okay, I'd be happy to. The name of the town is Croissy-sur-Seine. The name sur Seine, that part of it really means on the Seine. It would be just as if we called this town Geneva on the Fox. It's a town of about 20,000 population. Many of its community live in Croissy but commute to the bigger city to do their work, etc. So it has similarities to Geneva in that sense. The tie-in with the river, the demographics of the town. It's a town easy to reach from Paris, so easy that about 100-some years ago, the Impressionist painters who had this newfound tool called oil paint that they could take out with them to the countryside to paint would go out by train, the new train line out of Paris, and get to the countryside along the river Seine and do many of their painting works. This is the tie-in then between the Impressionists, Croatie, and the Art Institute, etc., because some of the major works at the Art Institute were painted either right there or very, very nearby. The group that is the equivalent of the ICEC is called Croatie Sans Frontières, Croatie without borders, if you will. And they've been established for far longer than we have. The woman I mentioned, Karin DeMarco, had been very, very tied in with a town in Germany, a town in England, and I think now they have even started a relationship with another town in Romania. So about 7 years ago, Karin and a very small group came to visit Geneva here, and it was just, almost magical. This relationship was really going to take off. Since that time, we have organized 3 delegation visits to France and 3 from France here to Geneva. The most notable, probably, of the visits from France to Geneva was 2 years ago when their local jazz band called Rive Droite, Rive Gauche came. As part of their visit, they performed a concert with the Geneva High School jazz bands, and there were about 400 people in attendance, and people still remark how just fantastic that evening was. Prior to that, there had been a visit with 5 or 7 of their artists, and they brought their works to display here. And we were so overwhelmed needing space that we eventually needed to use Water Street Studios exhibit space because we had so much artworks to show. Speaking of artworks, I just would like to point out that Pierre Renaud was the artist who lived in Croatie. He is deceased now for 2 years, and this was a gift from Croatie to Geneva when they came maybe 4 years ago on their visit. Each time they have brought a gift from their city to us, and we in turn bring items from Geneva to them. The visits from Geneva to Croatie, the 3, have been with artists. The first group were artists who went to paint and take part in a painting en plein air, meaning to paint outdoors, just like the Impressionists would do. And so it was part of a festival which celebrates the Impressionist times there. Another time, there was a group of artists from here. They had actually brought their artworks with them, and there was a 5-person exhibit at the chateau in Croatie. And most recently, most of our ICEC board members had gone there. So we've had typically about 15 to 20 persons each time that have done an exchange. But it isn't only about exchange of physically visiting the other city, the other country. We try to keep up with some other activities here to broaden the feeling of culture here. So one of the most recent projects we had was with the Kids Zone, which is the after-school activities of the Park District of Geneva. And our board member, Carrie Krause, is an art teacher and artist, and so she taught her group here about Impressionism, and they created paintings of Impressionism. The river was the theme. At the same time, she had been working in conjunction with a teacher in France who also was teaching 3rd graders, 8-year-old students, and their works were sent here. So we had a month-long exhibit at Peck Farm. So this was a cultural exchange without actually people going back and forth. And then we shipped all those works back to France for display there.
So you started telling us a little bit about some of the activities that ICEC is involved here in Geneva. Can you care to expand on some of the other opportunities that are available right here at home?
Yes. Every year for the past 3 years, we've been asked by the Chamber of Commerce here in Geneva to participate in Sweden Vast. This is the section of Swedish Days that is truly all things Swedish over on 4th Street. So we had a booth, and we had Skype sessions with friends in Sweden back and forth all day on Saturday. And of course, that was really delightful for people to come by, whether they knew anything about Sweden, whether they were young or old, whether they spoke Swedish or not. By the way, the Swedes all speak English. And so it was really a fun time with that. And then further on France, another opportunity for people here in Geneva is that the Geneva High School, in conjunction with an international organization, seeks host homes for kids specifically from France. These are high school age students who come for a 3-week session during the summer. And we will be, once again working with them on that. And we always need host homes. It's a really rewarding experience for a family to invite someone.
What are some of the activities that ICEC has in store for the future?
So I had mentioned the student art exhibits, and we hope to continue that, but also probably expand it to either a middle school level or a high school level, so that we could have art projects going back and forth, and a chance to display them either in a location or even an online kind of venue. We also, of course, will have, once again, the students visiting here. We will do the Skype sessions during Swedish days. And speaking of Sweden, we are really working to find such a liaison with a town in Sweden. And I think we're making good progress because we have some local people who are actually actively participating and helping us with this search. So stay tuned.
What are some of the other projects or issues that the ICEC discusses at their monthly meetings?
Well, certainly the Swedish cultural partner, getting more people involved. We'd like to broaden what we do to have more community activities with other groups in the cultural groups in the community. For example, we are starting to plan with the Geneva Public Library some book discussions or film discussions that focus on international culture. Next May, the Greater Geneva Art Guild is going to use as part of their art fete a painting en plein air contest modeled on the way they do this in Croatie for a day, where an artist is given a blank canvas and goes at it for a day of painting along the river or some other venue in the town. So we'll certainly be involved with that. And we invite anyone who can help us with any of these activities who is interested in this. One of the number one questions I'm asked as I'm going around Geneva, of course, is, so when are the French coming again? And I think I can answer that here. Most likely fall of 2015, we will have a delegation coming from France. And so for that, we don't know yet what the group will be, artists, musicians, or some other culture group, but we will be needing host homes, people who can help us set up events, drive people, meet and greet, etc. So we'll look forward to more community participation.
Well, you lead perfectly into my next question is, if I were wanting to get involved with the ICEC, how would I go about doing that?
Well, we have a website at icecgeneva.org. My email address is there. It's simply cynthia@icecgeneva.org, or contact any of our board members. Let me list the board members, please. David Bald, Lynn Landberg, Angela Chalberg-Poole, Carrie Kraus, Pam Cabine, and Bobby Alderfer. They're all Genevans. They're all, very active in many other things, and so they're easy to find.
And can you tell our viewers, when is your monthly meetings and where are they held?
The monthly meetings are actually held here in the Geneva City Hall, in the meeting room just behind the City Council chambers. We meet generally the second Wednesday of the month at 5:15 for about an hour. And it's best to check the city newsletter because we don't always meet monthly, and sometimes we have to change our date.
Sure, and you can find our city meetings either in our agenda center on our website or our meeting calendar, which is at www.geneva.il.us. Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Officially Speaking. We'd like to thank Cynthia Albright for her time and insight into the ICEC. We also thank you for watching. We hope you tune in again next month to get the official word from our elected and appointed officials.